Good evening. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi returns home after a five-nation visit. The tour that energized bilateral ties, marked and empowered BRICS and pushed for South-South cooperation. Ukraine Recovery Conference opens in Rome. EU announces $2.7 billion in reconstruction support. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio meets Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Kuala Lumpur. Says Lavrov shared new idea on Ukraine that can open the door to peace. Last day of French President Macron's state visit to Britain. London and Paris work on a deal to check undocumented migrants crossing the English Channel. US President Donald Trump slabs 50% duty on goods from Brazil. President Lula da Silva promises reciprocal measures. Prime Minister Narendra Modi returned home after successfully concluding his five-nation visit. In all, the five-nation Prime Minister highlighted issues faced by the Global South and also firmed up multiple pacts on areas of immense importance. The aim was deepening India's ties across continents from Africa to Latin America and the Caribbean. We get you more in the next report.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi undertook a five-nation tour from July 2nd to 9, visiting Ghana, Trinidad and Tobago, Argentina, Brazil and Namibia. A journey focused on boosting bilateral cooperation and strengthening India's global partnerships. In Ghana, PM Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit the West African nation in 30 years. India and Ghana signed 4 key agreements spanning culture, traditional medicine and more. In a special recognition, PM Modi was conferred Ghana's highest state honour.
Both the leaders acknowledged that this is a historic visit for the fact that this visit is taking place at the Prime Minister level from India after 30 years. President Mahama clearly acknowledged that it is a landmark visit that is very timely and very opportunistic at a time when Ghana is also looking for partnership with India to deepen economic engagement.
Next, in Trinidad and Tobago, PM Modi was welcomed by Prime Minister Kamla Persad Bissessar, marking the first Indian PM visit to the country since 1999. Both the nations inked 6 MOUs covering infrastructure, pharmaceuticals and other sectors. PM Modi was also awarded Trinidad and Tobago's highest civilian honour, the Order of the Star of the Republic.
A total of 6 MOUs or agreements have been signed between the two countries. These are, firstly, MOU on recognition of Indian pharmacopoeia. Secondly, we signed an agreement on Indian grant assistance for implementation of quick impact projects. In addition, we had program of cultural exchanges for the period 2025 to 2028, an MOU on cooperation in sports, an MOU on cooperation in diplomatic training, and an MOU on the establishment of 2 ICCR chairs of Hindi and Indian studies at the universities of West Indies of Trinidad and Tobago.
In Argentina, PM Modi held wide-ranging talks with President Javier Milei. Both leaders pledged to expand cooperation in trade, technology, defense, health and space, reinforcing a growing strategic partnership.
The two leaders discussed the necessity of diversifying and expanding bilateral trade. The Prime Minister requested Argentina's support in expanding the India-Mercosur preferential trade agreement, noting that such an expansion can bring mutual benefits for both sides and open up new opportunities.
Prime Minister Modi then travelled to Brazil for the 17th BRICS Summit in Rio and a subsequent state visit in Brasilia at the invitation of President Lula da Silva. During the state visit, the two leaders held talks on trade and investment, defense and security, health and pharmaceuticals, agriculture, renewable energy, energy security, digital public infrastructure, space cooperation, and traditional medicine. In a special gesture, President Lula awarded PM Modi Brazil's highest civilian honor, the Grand Collar of the National Order of the Southern Cross.
One of the key areas that were discussed, it includes defense and security, agriculture, food and nutritional security, energy transformation and climate change, digital transformation and artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, industrial partnerships, including defense industries, critical minerals, oil and gas, and also bioenergy and pharmaceutical industry, and also business and private sector cooperation.
Concluding his tour in Namibia, PM Modi was accorded a ceremonial welcome including a 21-gun salute. Talks with President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah focused on energy, health, education and digital cooperation. India and Namibia signed 4 agreements to deepen ties, and PM Modi received Namibia's highest honor, the Order of the Most Ancient Welwitschia Mirabilis.
Cooperation that were discussed was in the area of natural resources, because as you know that Namibia is endowed with rich natural resources like diamonds, lithium, copper, cobalt, graphite. All of these rich critical minerals are useful for our industry. The cooperation in the area of health was discussed, which also included the possibility of Jan Aushadhi being introduced in Namibia. Also supply of medicines and direct sourcing from India.
With this multi-nation outreach, Prime Minister Modi has not only bolstered strategic partnerships but also reinforced India's position as a trusted and influential global player. Bureau Report, DD India.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 5-nation visit was a historic one. As we showed, there were many milestones and strategic achievements. It also marked some important personal record for Prime Minister Modi. He addressed the parliaments of Ghana, Trinidad and Tobago and Namibia. The last one marked his 17th address in a foreign nation's parliament. No other Indian Prime Minister has achieved this feat. Prime Minister addresses the National Assembly of Namibia on Wednesday. Gets a standing ovation and applause from lawmakers. We're looking at Prime Minister's rising stature and addressing foreign parliaments. In his address across parliaments, he advocates for the cause of democracy and global south. It marked the 17th address in a foreign nation's parliament, the one that took place in Namibia. Prime Minister has addressed now more foreign parliaments than any other Indian Prime Minister, in fact matching the combined total of all Congress Prime Ministers before him. After coming to power in 2014, Prime Minister addressed parliaments in Bhutan, Nepal, Australia and Fiji. Then in 2015, he addressed parliaments in Mauritius, Sri Lanka, Mongolia and Afghanistan. It's to be noted, in the same year, he became the first Indian Prime Minister to address the British Parliament as well. Then in 2016, Prime Minister Modi addressed the joint sitting of the US Congress. He returns to address the US Congress in the year 2023. This becomes the only Indian Prime Minister to address the American Congress twice. In 2018, he addresses the House in Uganda. In 2019, he addresses the Parliament of Maldives. Those are the important addresses that take place. Uganda, then Maldives in 2019. Come to 2024, Prime Minister Modi, during his visit to Guyana, addresses the Parliament there. In 2025, this year, during his 5-nation visit, Prime Minister Modi addressed the parliaments of Ghana, Trinidad and Tobago and Namibia. Prime Minister Modi continues to garner global recognition for his statesmanship and soaring popularity on the world stage. In the latest honour, he has been conferred with Namibia's highest civilian award, the Order of the Most Ancient Welwisher Mirabilis. This is the 27th international honour bestowed upon Prime Minister Modi. Here's a roundup of the prestigious accolades that PM has received in the recent months.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred with Namibia's highest civilian award, the Order of the Most Ancient Welwisher Mirabilis. The award was presented by a Namibian president. This is not the first time that Prime Minister has been conferred with such state honours. Earlier, on July 9th, Prime Minister was awarded with Brazil's highest civilian award, the Grand Collar of the National Order of the Southern Cross. Brazilian President Lula da Silva presented the award in recognition of Prime Minister Modi's notable contributions to strengthening bilateral relations and enhancing India-Brazil cooperation across key global platforms. On July 4th, Prime Minister was awarded with the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the highest honour of the Caribbean nation, in a special ceremony at the President's house in Port of Spain. Prime Minister Modi is the first foreign leader to be conferred the award. On July 3rd, Prime Minister was awarded with Ghana's national honour, the Officer of the Order of the Star of Ghana, in recognition of his distinguished statesmanship and global leadership. In June this year, Prime Minister received highest honour of Cyprus, the Grand Cross of the Order of Makarios III. In March this year, Barbados conferred on him the Honorary Order of the Freedom of Barbados. The award was presented by President of Barbados and accepted on behalf of Prime Minister by Minister of State for External Affairs Pabitra Margarita. In the same month, during Mauritius' National Day celebrations, Prime Minister Modi was awarded the Grand Commander of the Order of the Star and Key of the Indian Ocean, the highest civilian honour of Mauritius. He is the first Indian leader to receive the award. In April, Sri Lanka honoured him with the Sri Lanka Mitra Vibhushana Award, the country's highest honour for foreign leaders. It was also the first time this award was presented to an Indian leader. Later in July, he was officially presented with Russia's highest civilian honour, the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle. Though it was awarded to him in 2019, he received it in person in 2024. The award recognized his key role in building a strong strategic partnership between India and Russia and promoting friendship between the two nations. In November 2024, Nigeria conferred upon him the Grand Commander of the Order of Niger, its highest honor. He became the only second foreign leader to receive this award, showing the high regard for his global leadership. In the same month, the President of Guyana, Dr. Muhammad Irfan Ali, awarded Prime Minister the country's highest national honor, the Order of Excellence, for his visionary leadership and his support for the rights of developing nations on global stage. Also in November, Prime Minister was honored with Dominica's highest national award, the Dominica Award of Honor. The award recognized his leadership, support to Dominica during COVID-19 pandemic, and efforts to strengthen ties between the two nations. In December 2024, the Amir of Kuwait awarded Prime Minister with the Order of Mubarak Al-Kabir, Kuwait's highest national honor. At the heart of these global recognitions lies Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision, one that focuses on the well-being of all humanity and on peace and dialogue. Whether addressing conflict, climate change or terrorism, Prime Minister's message remains clear. The world must stand united and work together to find lasting solutions. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen survives a no-confidence vote in the European Parliament. Hamas-Israel talks see little progress in Doha. Armenia-Azerbaijan leaders meet for peace talks in UAE. No breakthrough yet.
Om Trayambagam Gejamage Sugantim Prushtivattanam Uruvar Urumiga Bandanat Murtriyor Mushya Mahamrdat. Mahaganesha Potri, Har Har Mahadeva. I'm from Malaysia. I'm very happy we have reached this stage after, all the challenges that we went through. Finally, I'm here. So I am very, very blessed even to be here. But once I complete the journey, it will be very, very good.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. London and Paris were working on Thursday to thrash out a deal on undocumented migrants crossing the English Channel in small boats on the final day of French President's state visit to Britain. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and France's Emmanuel Macron headed inside for a summit with senior ministers focused on thorny issues and other shared concerns. They include the volatile situation in the Middle East, continued support for Ukraine, and a reboot of defense ties, including joint missile development and nuclear cooperation. French President Macron said that EU needs to be involved in finding solutions to illegal migration, a so-called one-in, one-out migrant deal, details of which were reportedly still being discussed, would see migrants sent back to France in return for the UK accepting a similar number of migrants with strong asylum cases.
For us, it's about delivering the changes that the British people want to see. We all agree the situation in the Channel cannot go on as it is. So we're bringing new tactics into play and a new level of intent to tackle illegal migration and break the business model of the criminal gangs.
I'm pleased that this summit will firstly cement progress in terms of strategic thinking and joint action, but also enable us to move forward in terms of capabilities, including on more sensitive issues such as nuclear deterrence. Important work has been completed and we will return to this later.
India's Minister of State for External Affairs, Pavitra Margareta, co-chaired a productive ASEAN-India foreign ministers meeting in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, with Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines, Teresa P. Lazaro. The leaders adopted a new ASEAN-India plan of action for the year starting 2026 till 2030, aimed at expanding cooperation and strengthening comprehensive strategic partnership. ASEAN-India celebrate Year of Tourism this year. Discussions focused on ways and means for further enhance people-to-people relations, proposed cooperation in digital, disaster management, defense, economy, maritime, and health. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio met in Malaysia on the sidelines of the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting. Their meeting comes at a time when US President Donald Trump said he was disappointed with Russian President Putin as the war in Ukraine drags on. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said his Russian counterpart Lavrov shared a new idea on Ukraine during their meeting in Malaysia, hours after Moscow's forces hammered Kiev with missiles and drones.
Shared some information and ideas that I intend to take back to the president. Hopefully it'll lead to something positive. I can't guarantee it. The president's been frustrated at the lack of progress. He's made that clear publicly. But, we'll see if that changes. And if we see opportunities to make progress on peace, we want to be involved in pursuing that.
Meanwhile, Rome is hosting a two-day conference on the reconstruction and recovery of Ukraine. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni welcomed the leaders. The conference is aimed at mobilizing international support for Ukraine. The European Commission has announced $2.7 billion in support to Ukraine. The funds include loan guarantees and additional grants from international and bilateral public financial institutions. The conference has pledged over $11.7 billion for economic recovery of Ukraine.
The message we want to send entrepreneurs today is simple. Do not be afraid to invest, to build, to rebuild in Ukraine. Because investing in Ukraine's reconstruction is not a gamble. It's an investment in a nation that has shown more resilience than any other. But it is also an investment in peace, in the economic growth of all Europe, and in the security of our citizens.
And German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has welcomed the launch of a European fund aimed at mobilizing private investment for the reconstruction of Ukraine at a high-level conference in Rome on Thursday. Chancellor Merz urged US President Donald Trump to stay with Europeans.
It requires freedom for the private sector to flourish. This is particularly important in the case of Ukraine because the enormous cost of reconstruction cannot be financed through public funds alone. This is why you, Volodymyr, and I, when we met in Berlin a few weeks ago, met German companies which are active in Ukraine. What I can report back from that meeting is the enormous interest of private businesses in participating in Ukraine's reconstruction.
US President Donald Trump announced on Wednesday a new 50% tariff on copper to start from August 1st. The move marks the latest in a string of sectoral tariffs Trump has placed on industries such as steel and aluminum. Donald Trump also announced a 50% duty on goods from Brazil to start on August 1st. Trump's move drew reactions from many countries. Brazil's president said that new tariffs would be met with reciprocal measures.
US President Donald Trump announced a 50% tariff on copper, saying on social media that it would be effective from 1st of August. Trump also announced a 50% tariff targeting Brazil. Trump's announcement drew reactions from various countries. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva fired back, saying new tariffs would be met with reciprocal measures. Brazil is the 15th largest US trading partner, with total two-way trade of $92 billion in 2024 and a rare $7.4 billion US trade surplus, according to US Census Bureau data. While Sri Lankan Central Bank governor expressed uncertainty over impact of US tariff.
What we don't know is that if there's going to be a shock to the economy, that we don't know yet. That we have to wait and see. But for the time being, I don't think it is too premature for us to factor that and how many employment losses, all these things, how many for Sri Lanka. It's uncertain and also difficult to estimate because it's a global phenomenon.
China's foreign ministry says that tariffs such as the 50% levy on copper announced by Trump on national security grounds serve no party's interests.
Our position on this issue is very clear. We have always opposed the overstretching of the concept of national security. We have also always believed that there are no winners in tariff wars and trade wars, and the arbitrary imposition of tariffs serves no party's interest.
South Korea's trade minister, Yoo Han-koo, said that more time is needed for tariff talks with the United States. While Philippines' economic affairs minister expressed concern about United States' decision to impose 20% tariffs on Philippine exports, but said the country will continue to negotiate.
We are in receipt of the United States' latest reciprocal tariff for the Philippines. We are concerned that the U.S. has decided to impose a 20% tariff on Philippine exports. The fact remains, however, that the 20% rate is the second lowest among all reciprocal tariffs that the U.S. has imposed on the region.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was in Kuala Lumpur for a meeting with the foreign ministers from ASEAN countries, met with Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Malaysian Prime Minister said he discussed Washington's trade tariffs with Rubio, who he said would consider Malaysia's views. Fuzail Ahmed's report for DD India.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen survived a no-confidence vote in the European Parliament on Thursday. The motion failed to get two-thirds majority it needed to pass, with 360 parliamentarians voting against the motion, while only 175 supporting it. The vote was initiated by far-right lawmakers who accuse von der Leyen of undermining trust in the EU through unlawful actions. It was the first time since 2014 that a Commission President has faced such a motion. Then President Jean-Claude Juncker also survived the vote. The talks between Hamas and Israel continue in Doha with little progress so far. Key issues include aid distribution, Israeli troop withdrawal, and guarantees of compliance. Israel insists on US-controlled aid, while Hamas demands mediator assurances. Despite the deadlock, both sides signal cautious optimism.
The latest round of indirect talks between Hamas and Israel has yet to achieve any major breakthrough, with key issues still unresolved. Officials from both sides involved confirmed that negotiations resumed on Sunday in Doha amid international efforts to end the ongoing conflict. However, the talks have not yet yielded the desired results so far. Held behind closed doors, very little official information has been released regarding their progress. As of Wednesday, the fourth day of this round, only minimal headway had been made towards a potential ceasefire agreement. According to analysts, the current negotiations are primarily stalled over three major issues. First, there is disagreement over who will be responsible for distributing humanitarian aid in Palestine. Second, the parties differ on the issue of the Israeli army's withdrawal. And third, Hamas is seeking guarantees from mediators that both sides will fully adhere to the terms of any future agreement. On the matter of humanitarian aid, Israel insists that distribution should be handled by US contractors and subject to Israeli government approval. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is currently visiting the United States, stated that a distribution system has already been put in place to prevent aid from being seized by Hamas.
Well, among them, but we have our own distribution system that has been established to prevent Hamas from stealing the food that is supposed to go to the population. They steal it, they take it for themselves, and the remainder they hike the prices and basically extort the Palestinian population in order to use it to continue recruiting people to their war machine, so their terror machine.
Commenting on the evolving situation, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio remained hopeful of a ceasefire deal in Gaza.
I think we're closer, and I think perhaps we're closer than we've been in quite a while.
Despite the deadlock, statements from both sides struck a relatively positive tone. A senior Hamas official stated that the group has shown significant flexibility during the negotiations and is cooperating actively with mediators. He also noted that Hamas has agreed to release 10 Israeli detainees as part of the proposed truce. Bureau Report, DD India.
After nearly 4 decades of conflict over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region, Armenian and Azerbaijani leaders have taken a significant step towards peace. The latest meeting signals renewed efforts to finalize a long-awaited agreement. DD India's Rahul Upadhyay gets us more.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev met in the United Arab Emirates on Thursday. According to both countries, the leaders are working to finalize a peace agreement aimed at ending nearly 4 decades of conflict over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. The two South Caucasus nations have fought multiple wars since the late 1980s. At that time, Nagorno-Karabakh, a region within Azerbaijan with a predominantly ethnic Armenian population, broke away with support from Armenia. Peace talks began after Azerbaijan recaptured Karabakh in September 2023, prompting almost all of the territory's 100,000 Armenians to flee to Armenia. Let's take a closer look at the history of this disputed region. Nagorno-Karabakh, referred to as Artsakh by Armenians, is a mountainous and landlocked area in the South Caucasus. Despite its historically Armenian majority population and decades of self-rule under the unrecognized Republic of Artsakh, the territory is internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan. The conflict dates back to the collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917. When both Armenia and Azerbaijan laid claim to the region, sparking tensions that would last more than a century. In a major breakthrough earlier this year, both sides announced that a draft peace agreement had been finalized. Thursday's meeting in Abu Dhabi marks the first formal encounter between the two leaders since reaching that milestone. The United States and the Kremlin have expressed support for the peace process, hoping for a final resolution to the conflict. DD India's Rahul Upadhyay reports.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. We'll talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's historic 5-nation visit.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says, supply creates its own demand, between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. Prime Minister Narendra Modi returns home after a five-nation visit. The tour that energized bilateral ties, marked and empowered BRICS and pushed for South-South cooperation. Ukraine Recovery Conference opens in Rome. EU announces $2.7 billion in reconstruction support. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio meets Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Kuala Lumpur. Says Lavrov shared new idea on Ukraine that can open the door to peace. We now return to our top story and reflect on Prime Minister Modi's five-nation visit. Joining me is Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat. Good evening and welcome, Ambassador Kumar. While India's relations with each of the five nations is unique and meaningful, when we look at the outcome of the visit as a whole, what stands out according to you?
Thank you very much for having me. I think it's an extremely important visit from three perspectives. The first is that some of the countries, no prime minister has gone for decades. Yes. And I'm even talking about countries like Brazil, where the last visit you will have to go back in time at least 5-6 decades to find out when the Prime Minister of India visited. So that was the first. And we are talking about Brazil, with which we have a strategic partnership and we are working closely together in the United Nations. Some other countries, no Prime Minister has ever gone. And I think Argentina, for example, you will again have to go back to the time of Indira Gandhi to know whether anybody went there or not. So that is the other important aspect I would like to highlight. The next one that I would like to talk about is that there is a certain sense in the world today that you need to strike a personal rapport with heads of state and heads of government. Not everything can be done at the level of foreign ministers or foreign secretaries. There is a certain summit diplomacy is what we diplomats call diplomacy at the highest level between heads of state and heads of government. That has become virtually irreplaceable. And therefore, there is a tremendous demand on the time of the Prime Minister of India to go to these places, because we just can't keep receiving all of them in India and not reciprocate those visits. So that's the other thing which has come into its own, summit level diplomacy. The last thing that I would like to say is that we need to really keep these ties and relationships going, because suddenly you have something like a Pahalgam terrorist attack in which we need the support of countries. I realized that when I went along with the parliamentary delegation to countries like Japan, Indonesia, South Korea, but those are countries which are closer to us, with which I think people have been going and coming. But countries like Ghana, for example, have tremendous clout in the African continent. And therefore, it was very important for somebody like the Prime Minister to go to Ghana and see what is happening there in terms of how India can actually try and build a relationship with Africa. I think the very last point I would like to make is also that if India has any desire to be the leader of the global South, and I think we are a natural candidate for being the leader of the global South, then countries like Ghana, Namibia, Brazil become super important, because these are countries of the global South, and it's extremely important that India tries to understand their perspectives on a whole range of international issues. You will recall that India wanted to ensure that African Union entered the G20 during its presidency. That has not been lost on any country in Africa, and therefore there is a certain catch-up, if you like, that India is also doing vis-a-vis other countries like China. which may have made some headway in Latin America and Africa. But I think India is a natural candidate to provide leadership. And that I also will say that India has tremendous acceptability and soft power among countries in Africa.
Right, sir. Staying with the point that you made about counter-terrorism in Brazil, Prime Minister flagged the issue of double standards on terrorism. We also see a BRICS joint statement condemning the attack in Kashmir. And the point that you were also part of that outreach mission after Operation Sindoor. How do you read the significance of this proactive and continuous engagement, as it were, with the international community on this issue?
No, you're quite right. You cannot do these relationships in fits and bouts. Call them once in 10 years, you go there once in 10 years. And I've noticed two things about the current Prime Minister, which a lot of others have noticed as well. First, we did not know what kind of a leader he will be in the domain of foreign policy. When he had come from Gujarat to take office as Prime Minister of India, it was not obvious to many of us as to whether he will take interest in foreign policy and what kind of a leader he will be. It is now beyond any doubt he has proved his mettle in terms of foreign policy. He has taken to it like a duck takes to water. Second thing that I have noticed about our Prime Minister is that he likes to make investment in personal relationships. And you cannot do that in just one trip. So you may be meeting them on the margins of the UN General Assembly, which is the natural place to meet leaders of Mali and Ghana and Namibia. But unless you go follow it up and go to their country, go make a speech in their parliament, the fact that you are receiving the highest honor of those countries, that makes a huge difference to the self-image, the self-respect, and their own prestige that they see in terms of receiving the Indian Prime Minister. Those things can't be done by meeting them on the margins of the UN General Assembly in New York. And that is why I think the Prime Minister's visit to countries like Namibia, countries like Ghana, and countries like Argentina will become very important.
Right, and particularly talking about India's Africa outreach, Prime Minister visited Ghana and then finally Namibia. In Ghana, Prime Minister called India a co-traveler of Ghana and its development journey. In Namibia, he highlighted that how Africa should not just be seen as a source of resources, of minerals. How does he then also distinguish the nature of India's development partnership when there's so many global powers competing for presence in the continent?
I think we have a natural advantage because we have been plugging for South-South cooperation with African countries for a long time. One of my earliest postings was the Democratic Republic of Congo in the late 80s. And the two amazing symbols that you will see in Africa, at least those days, was a Tata truck, and then there was the Kirlosk water pump. This you would see in very arid areas, areas which are not connected well by roads, and yet these two were lifesavers. Now this is very different from other countries which would come in and build big football stadiums or big palaces and big parliamentary buildings. We may not do that, but the fact that we did these two and then we have done so many other things means that our cooperation is much more people-centric. The emphasis of India's development cooperation with Africa is to assess whether it will make a difference to people's lives. And that is why I think India has had tremendous success. But it's also a fact that we are seeking cooperation in critical minerals and rare earths. I don't think we need to be shy about it. It's a fact that we would, of course, not like to extract these minerals to the disadvantage of those countries in Africa. But I think we can legitimately say that, listen, we would like to pay a fair price and get those rare earths and minerals which we need for our development. The last thing that I would like to say is that India's development of digital public infrastructure will be of great interest to these countries. They are at a level of development where they would welcome cooperation with India, and they know that if something like this can work in India,
Yes.
which is a large country with different levels of development and 1.4 billion people, then it can work in Africa. So for a variety of reasons, I see a win-win situation in terms of development partnership between India and Africa.
And we also see the prospects of South-South cooperation peaking in the manner in which the expanded and assertive BRICS take shape in the joint statement that it had come out with. Now, India all set to host it next year. How do you see the manner in which BRICS made its presence felt?
No, I think the BRICS, I have written about it as well. I think the BRICS summit declaration was a long one, it's true, and they have managed to pronounce themselves on every single conceivable issue facing the world. And I have argued that actually I find greater unity among the BRICS participants rather than the G7 summit which took place in Alberta, Canada. And the BRICS is no longer just 5 countries. We are now 11 countries. And in spite of the fact that we have expanded, there was some talk before the BRICS summit that the expansion will not contribute to cohesion in terms of a joint statement. But I think the BRICS summit in Rio has surprised everybody by coming up with a joint declaration based on consensus. And they have been able to come up with some strong messaging in terms of tariffs, in terms of bombing of Iran, in terms of the Palestinian state, in terms of the situation in Gaza, in terms of UN reform, for example. The first time I think China and Russia have specifically said that they welcome a greater role for India and Brazil. So a lot of things in the BRICS declaration, and I think India takes over BRICS at a very critical time. The Prime Minister has already let it be known that he would like to reshape BRICS in terms of a development paradigm that countries of the South can use. So all in all, I would say what you say is absolutely right. A lot of South-South cooperation and a development paradigm that BRICS is now talking. And at a time when other fora like the G20, G7 are facing headwinds, I think it's very heartening to see that countries of the global South can get together within the platform of BRICS and pronounce themselves in a very unified voice. And that's the main takeaway from me.
On that note, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, many thanks for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective. Moving on, Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi is hosting the first annual academic conference on Indian knowledge systems. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar addressed the inaugural session of the conference at JNU. Speaking at the event, Vice President stressed that India must not merely import global narratives, adding that the country's rise as a global power should go hand in hand with the growth of its intellectual and cultural influence. He underlined that the strength of a nation lies in the originality of its thought, the timelessness of its values, and the resilience of its intellectual traditions.
The British colonization brought forth the second interlude, when Indian knowledge system was stunted, stymied, and subverted. We adopted their practices. Marxist perversion replaced colonial distortion. And friends, even today, the shadows of those colonial misreadings continue to shape textbooks, curricula, and minds. This conference, I believe strongly, stands as a serious academic endeavor to correct a historical wrong. Now is the time to cast off the chains of borrowed narratives, inherited distortions. It is time to reclaim our intellectual sovereignty.
And the conference on Indian knowledge systems will continue till 12th of July. Still to come on DD India News Hour. India to host major international shooting competitions for next 3 consecutive years. Serbian tennis icon Novak Djokovic will battle Jannik Sinner in the semi-finals of Wimbledon. on Friday.
Ganesha Potri, Har Har Mahadeva. I'm from Malaysia. I'm very happy we have reached this stage after, all the challenges that we went through. Finally, I'm here. So I am very, very blessed even to be here. But once I complete the journey, it will be very, very good.
Welcome back. You're watching DT India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. The Nepal Institute of International Cooperation and Engagement organized a high-level seminar on the topic Terrorism in South Asia, Challenges to Regional Peace and Security in Kathmandu. The seminar was an eye-opener as how Pakistan-based terrorism posed threat to regional peace in South Asia. Addressing the gathering, several speakers noted that groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, which are UN-designated terrorist organizations, have historical ties to Al-Qaeda and operate in Pakistan, posing risks to India and potentially using Nepal as a transit point. For the upcoming academic year, a significant number of Indian students have been awarded Erasmus Plus scholarships. This opportunity allows students to immerse themselves in diverse academic environments, typically studying at multiple European universities and earning joint or multiple degrees. DD India's Jessica Taneja spoke to EU Ambassador to India about the scholarship program and the potential of India-EU free trade agreement.
We have with us the EU Ambassador to India. Thank you for speaking to DD India and taking our time. Now, Erasmus is an important scholarship program that the European Union, along with its partners, have had for more than a decade now. You said 101 students are going to various European universities this year. How important is this project for the European Union to engage with India and its youth?
I mean, this is a program that originally was designed to enhance mobility of students within the EU member states. So that was the origin of Erasmus, but we created Erasmus Mundus to increase the mobility and exchange between students of European Union member states and third countries. And in that respect, there is a great track record of between EU and India of mobility of students, because the Indian students have been historically the largest cohort of students coming from third countries and studying in Europe. Over 6,000 of them have already had the chance to use the Erasmus Mundus opportunity scholarship to go to the best universities in Europe and learn about Europe, the culture, the life experience, but also have access to top universities.
And this year has been an important year for both India and the European Union. We saw the visit of the European Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, along with her college commissioners as well. Perhaps the largest delegation ever visiting our country. The importance has been in the education sector, trade as well. There's an ongoing free trade agreement under discussion and negotiations, which both of them had agreed on would be finalized before this year ends. How is that coming along when it comes to advancing India-EU relations at this point? Where is it at this stage?
I think really the FTA will really give a further boost to the India economic relations with the EU, and likewise for the EU. I think we have the potential to double or triple our two-way trade. So we look confidently at this FTA being concluded by the end of the year, as intimated by the two leaders, and I think the negotiating teams are working hard to deliver that deal. I think it's gonna be a catalyst for the relationship in all sort of way. Already, there are 6,000 European companies working in India, generating directly or indirectly 8 million jobs. So can you imagine what FTA can do to boost that?
You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for all the action from the world of sports. The send-off ceremony for Team India delegation to the Gothia Cup 2025 was held at Embassy of Sweden in Chanakyapuri, New Delhi. On the sidelines of the event, Prasar Bharati chairman Navneet Sehgal emphasized the vital role of sports in building an inclusive society. In an exclusive conversation with DD India correspondent Narayan Singh, he said Prasar Bharati is committed to taking sports to every corner of the country, ensuring wider reach and greater participation.
Sports plays a key role for the formation of an inclusive society, and now the team from India are going to Sweden to participate in the Gothia Cup. And right now I am joined by the chairman of the Prasar Bharati, Shri Navneet Sehgal ji. Sir, a very warm welcome. The way things are happening, two teams from the India are going to participate in the Gothia Cup. So do you think it's a big push towards the four-worded mantra of the PM Modi, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and it is taking it to a different level?
Yeah, you see, all the three things that is happening today: women empowerment, empowerment of those with special needs, and the medium. Medium is sports. You know, sports is big inclusive program. Now, under our Prime Minister Modi ji, the country is progressing very fast. We have inclusive and a very progressive society, and the sending off of the women team, girls team under 15, and the team with the special needs to Gothia Cup Sweden is an example of emerging and resurgent India, both in terms of development of society and in terms of empowerment, in terms of inclusive development, and also empowerment of the nation through sports.
So talking about the Prasar Bharati, it is adopting an inclusive philosophy in broadcasting of sports. We saw in the past the way the Para Khelo India games were covered by the Prasar Bharati, and the special games in Turin, the winter games, and also we saw the Berlin summer games, the special games were covered by. So how you look this approach of the Prasar Bharati making an inclusive broadcasting sports?
No, it's as a national independent broadcaster, it is our duty to bring the not only information but also knowledge about various aspects of societal development. Sports is a very big step towards the development of overall society, and as Prasar Bharati we are trying to bring the sports to the nook and corner of the country. You see, we have a large presence in the rural areas. We have already signed agreements with Hockey India, Handball Federation. Now we will do it with the Football Federation also, and simultaneously with badminton and other sports. So trying to kind of put in an effort towards Honorable Prime Minister's vision of development of sports and development of a better society.
Prasar Bharati is leaving no stone unturned to make the mission of the Prime Minister Modi through sports to make an inclusive one, and the way Prasar Bharati is doing and working in the field of sports, covering each and every sports, whether it's para sports, whether it's special over, definitely days are not far when the sports through the inclusion will be the key thing in India. With camera person Lalit, Narayan Singh, DD India, Delhi.
Serbian tennis icon Novak Djokovic has advanced to the semi-finals of Wimbledon. Djokovic took one step closer to record-leveling 8th Wimbledon win as he battled past Flavio Cobolli. 2 more victories and Djokovic will be able to secure the record-extending 25th Grand Slam title. Djokovic's next challenger is world number 1 Jannik Sinner, who defeated Ben Shelton in the quarterfinals. Sinner has slight upper hand over Djokovic. He leads Djokovic 5-4 in head-to-head. Sinner's latest win over Djokovic came in the French Open semi-finals last month. India has been officially confirmed as the host nation for major international shooting competitions for the next 3 consecutive years. India will host the ISSF World Cup in 2027, ISSF Junior World Championship in 2028, and conduct the first ever edition of the Shooting League of India in November this year. This further cements India's standing as trusted and capable global destination for the sport of shooting. That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.